Regardless of where we live or the varied cultures we find ourselves embedded in, I think it is safe to say that the drive to socialize is a human universal. Our brains are wired to be social, and we are driven by deep motivations to stay connected with friends and family. We are naturally curious about what is going on in the minds of other people, and our identities are formed by the values lent to us from the groups we call our own. Parts of the social mind can be traced back to the earliest mammals hundreds of millions of years ago. And while we tend to think it is our capacity for abstract reasoning that is responsible for Homo sapiens dominating the planet, there is increasing evidence that our dominance as a species is attributable to our ability to think socially. The greatest ideas almost always require teamwork to bring them to fruition, and social reasoning is what allows us to build and maintain the social relationships and infrastructure needed for teams to thrive. In a sense, our brains have a passion of their own, and we know this because when given a chance, they devote nearly all of their spare time to practicing the same thing. Therefore, that the brain has a network devoted to social cognition should come as no surprise. Contra popular opinion, social intelligence is not just general intelligence applied to social situations, and this commonly held view implies social intelligence isn't special and our interest in the social world is a mere accident. If social intelligence were a random application of our general intelligence, we would expect to see the same brain regions associated with both kinds of intelligence. However, the brain regions reliably associated with general intelligence and its related cognitive abilities, like working memory and reasoning, tend to be on the outer or lateral surface of the brain, whereas thinking about other people and oneself utilizes mostly medial or midline regions of the brain. Moreover, neural networks that support social and non-social thinking often work at cross purposes, much like the two ends of a neural seesaw. If we look at the brain when a person isn't being asked to do anything in particular, we see the social cognition network turn on. Typically, the more this network turns on, the more the general cognition network responsible for other non-social kinds of thinking turns off, and likewise vice versa. We also evolved to experience threats to our social connections in the same way we experience physical pain by activating the same neural circuitry. To sum up, our brain is profoundly social, with some of the oldest social wiring dating back more than 100 million years. Our wiring motivates us to stay connected, and it returns our attention again and again to understanding the minds of the people around us like a rubber band snapping back into place. One might ask, what is so beneficial about living in larger groups? Why would evolution foster an increase in our typical group size by increasing the size of our brains? The most obvious advantage to larger groups is that predators can be strategically avoided or dealt with more successfully. It is hard to keep your mind focused on finding food when you are worried about being food, and it's dangerous to be out in the open looking for food by yourself. Groups of apes, in contrast, can trade off time looking for food and watching out for predators. That by itself is a big advantage. The downside of larger groups is the increased competition for food and mating partners within the group. The larger your group, the more likely it is that someone will try to poach from you. Primates with strong social skills can limit this downside by forming alliances and friendships with others in their group. Moreover, there is a hidden advantage to groups with respect to mental health, and in a way, we outsource the problem of our sanity to those around us rather than rely entirely on our own individual minds. Since we are social beings par excellence, and there is no shortage of wisdom and guidance outside of us embedded in the social world, we do not have to rely on our own limited resources to remember the road or to orient ourselves in new territory, and can instead rely on the signs and guideposts placed there so effortfully by others. Over the course of human history, we have reaped the benefits of large groups of people united in common cause, choosing to collaborate with no clear end in sight so many times in the rise of great civilizations, advancements in science and medicine, and the exploration of space. We did these things not because of the promise of a carrot, but because we felt we were contributing to something bigger than ourselves and something with value that would last well beyond our own lifetimes. It is not the work we remember with fondness, but the camaraderie, how the group came together to get things done. Since group culture is one of the most powerful forces on the planet, it is useful to explore the question of why certain groups add up to be greater than the sum of their parts, while others add up to be less. When you ask people inside highly successful groups to describe their relationship with one another, they all tend to choose the same word, which is not friends, or team, or tribe, or any other equally plausible term. The word they use is family, and what is more, they tend to describe the feeling of those relationships in the same way. Indeed, the word culture comes from the Latin word cultus, which means to care. The following experiment further illustrates the non-linearly scaling nature of social cognition in a group. Peter Skillman, a designer and engineer, held a competition over several months, assembling a series of 4-person groups at Stanford, the University of California, the University of Tokyo, and a few other places. He challenged each group to build the tallest possible structure using the following items: 20 pieces of uncooked spaghetti, 1 yard of transparent tape, 1 yard of string, and 1 standard-sized marshmallow. The contest had one rule: the marshmallow had to end up on top. The fascinating part of the experiment, however, had less to do with the task itself than with the participants. Some of the teams consisted of business school students, while others consisted of kindergartners. The business students got right to work. They began talking and thinking strategically. They examined the materials, tossed ideas back and forth, and asked thoughtful, savvy questions. They generated several options, then honed the most promising ideas till they decided to pursue one particular strategy and divided up the tasks. It was professional, rational, and intelligent. The kindergartners took a different approach. They did not strategize. They did not analyze or share experiences. They did not ask any questions, propose options, or hone any ideas. In fact, they barely talked at all. They stood very close to one another, and their interactions were not smooth or organized. They abruptly grabbed materials from one another and started building, following no particular plan or strategy. When they spoke in short bursts, such as here, no here. Their entire technique was haphazard. If you had to bet which of the teams would win, you would bet on the business school students without a second thought, because they possess the intelligence, skills, and experience to do a superior job. This reflects the way we normally think about group performance. We presume skilled individuals will combine to produce a skilled performance in the same way we presume 2 plus 2 will combine to produce 4. But your bet would be wrong. In dozens of trials, kindergartners built structures that average 26 inches tall, while business school students built structures that average less than 10 inches. The result is hard to absorb because it feels like an illusion. But this illusion, like every illusion, happens because our instincts have led us to focus on the wrong details. We focus on what we can see, and that is individual skills. But individual skills are not what matters. What matters is the interaction. The business school students appear to be collaborating, but in fact they are engaged in a process psychologists call status management. They are figuring out where they fit into the larger picture. Who is in charge? Is it okay to criticize someone's idea? What are the rules here? Their interactions appear smooth, but their underlying behavior is riddled with inefficiency, hesitation, and subtle competition. Instead of focusing on the task, they are navigating their uncertainty about one another. They spend so much time managing status that they fail to grasp the essence of the problem. The actions of the kindergartners appear disorganized on the surface, but when you view them as a single entity, their behavior is efficient and effective. They are not competing for status. They stand shoulder to shoulder and work energetically together. They move quickly, spotting problems and offering help. They experiment, take risks, and notice outcomes, which guides them towards effective solutions. The kindergartners succeed not because they are smarter, but because they work together in a smarter way. They are tapping into a simple and powerful method in which a group of ordinary people can create a performance far beyond the sum of their parts.